This is Garis Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 682, part 2, entitled Masculist Screaming at British Feminazi Politicians. Carrying straight on. If all women are FIPS, as in a FIPS society, then there is no manslavery. If all women are FIPS, then the divorce courts can be based on the principle of financial independence. So custody of children is made joint by default. There's no alimony and no halving of wealth and stuff. The third major gender crime that women commit against men, besides manslavery and divorce rape, that makes Masculists hate them so much is forced fathering. Women have the legislative right, called the MARA, that's maternity rejection right, aka abortion right, to reject an unwanted pregnancy that could ruin a woman's life. Men have no PARA, paternity rejection right. So millions of men are forced into a paternity that they do not want, thus manslaving him for 2 decades to pay for his unwanted child. Even worse is when a pregnant woman tells her man that the kid growing in her is his when she knows it's not. This is called paternity fraud and is truly hated by the Masculists as one of the worst of all gender crimes that women commit against men. Masculists want paternity fraudster women to be put in jail for 15 years, since paternity fraud is a more horrible gender crime against men than is rape against women, which typically gets a man a 10-year jail sentence. To amend further gender laws, in brackets, for example, creating a FIPS society, reforming the divorce courts, legislating the PARA and the OPTAB, O-P-T-A-B, that's obligatory paternity testing at birth, to block women's paternity fraud, removing across the board legal discriminations against men, close brackets. The Masculists are pushing hard for the establishment of GECs, GECs, Gender Equality Committees, in the parliaments that consist half of female feminists and half of male masculists, so that the gender issues of both sexes are dealt with equally, capital letters, which is far from being the case today in our currently gynocentric culture in gender political terms. One of the major goals of the Masculists is to educate society that gender oppression is very much a two-way street, and that in reality women, capital letters, oppress men more, worse, with their horrible decades-lasting gender crimes against men, brackets, for example, the big 3 mentioned above, that is manslavery, divorce, rape, forced fathering, close brackets. Masculists make an important distinction between people who are monoconscious and biconscious. To be monoconscious means to believe that gender oppression is a one-way street, which is what the feminists believe. Feminism is a deeply misandrist, gynocentric ideology that preaches to women that gender oppression is a one-way street, that women are the oppressed and men are the oppressors. So, of course, monoconscious feminists tend to be rather feminazi bitchy towards men, because they're angry at men for the ways that men oppress women, for example, rape, domestic violence, sexual harassment, patriarchy, etc. But know nothing about how women oppress men, brackets, for example, manslavery, divorce, rape, forced fathering, etc. So do not have their monoconscious anger at men cancelled, in capital letters, by a female masculine anger at women for the ways that women oppress men. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary of the UK government, is monoconscious. She sees the extent of the misogyny coming from men towards women and does not like it. And as a political minister in the cabinet of the UK government, aims to stamp it out with legislation by equating extreme misogynistic statements coming from men with terrorism. From the above, it should be clear to anyone that Masculists make, in capital letters, extremely misogynistic statements against, in brackets, gender criminal, close brackets, women, saying that Masculists intend to wipe such women off the face of the earth by being at war against them, forcing them to rot on the shelf by being totally ignored, forced to die slow, miserable deaths, hated and spat at for oppressing men so badly. So, and here we come to the crux of the flyer. Will Yvette Cooper put Masculist leaders in jail for their extreme misogynistic statements? Question mark. If Yvette Cooper is exposed to Masculist ideas, will she use her considerable intelligence, in brackets, since she is, after all, a government minister, the Home Secretary, close brackets, to see that Masculist extreme misogynistic statements are justified, given that the Masculists are at war against gender criminal women? Question mark. Will she see that these extreme misogynistic statements are Masculist war talk and hence comprehensible to people who understand Masculist issues? Question mark. Yvette Cooper has two options, I think. She can remain monoconscious and try to prosecute Masculist leaders for their expressions of hatred against gender criminal women, which of course will only generate more hatred against monoconscious feminists by the Masculists. Or she can educate herself into Masculist ideas and become biconscious herself. If she has a man in her life, then she needs to think about the possibility that if she remains monoconscious and her man becomes biconscious faster than she does, in brackets, by learning some Masculist ideas, open brackets, for example, by typing Masculism into the YouTube search window and looking at the videos that come up much later in the search list, close double brackets, then he, with his new biconsciousness, may find the monoconsciousness of his woman deeply hypocritical and bigoted, so he becomes disgusted with her and then dumps her. Masculists have a very effective strategy to force monoconscious feminists to become biconscious, and that is, as illustrated above, to target the men in the lives of monoconscious feminists, teaching these men Masculism, so that these men become biconscious. If the women in these biconscious Masculist men's lives do not become biconscious faster than their men do, then these monoconscious feminist women will risk being dumped by their biconscious men. What will Yvette Cooper do? Question mark. Will she remain what the Masculists call an MFB, that's a monoconscious feminazi bigot? Or will she see the light and become biconscious? Question mark. Will she be able to put herself in the shoes of the Masculists and feel the same hatred that Masculists have towards their enemies, that is, the fluffies and the fluffy feminists? Question mark. If she remains implacably monoconscious and follows through with her plan to equate extreme expressions of misogyny with extremism, terrorism, then she will become even more hated by Masculists and MGTOWs, in brackets, that's men going their own way, who reject marriage and paternity due to the toxicity of the divorce courts controlled by the fluffy feminists who see men as cash machines to pay for fluffy divorcing wives, close brackets. Than was the late Susan Wojcicki, former CEO of YouTube, who as a monoconscious feminist promoted feminist channels and deleted Masculist and MGTOW channels. If Yvette Cooper becomes the bitter enemy of the Masculists, then her implacability towards the Masculists will, in later years, boomerang back at her as a politician, as Masculists and MGTOW ideas keep spreading across the planet, as millions of men wake up to the idea that gender oppression is a two-way street and that women oppress men worse, so that gender criminal women should, capital letters, be hated. Masculists are abolitionists, as has been stated several times. Masculists see fluffydom as man's slavery, and man's slavery as slavery. Slavery rouses passions and hatreds. If Yvette Cooper makes herself hated by the Masculists, then she may end up a casualty in the gender war as men rise up and liberate themselves. Yvette Cooper, be warned. Become biconscious or pay a very heavy price. You may lose your man, or worse, in the case of a gender war, you may even lose your life. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. In brackets, click on the Masculist tab for 680 plus Masculist essays and their videos. Close brackets. See also a London Reel interview on Masculism at AI will kill 1 billion people. Do we create our exterminators? Professor Hugo de Garis. London Reel. In brackets. See the last half hour of this 2-hour interview for the Masculist segment. Close brackets. These flyers are available in text and video formats on Minds, BitChute, Odyssey, MGTOW.tv, X, and, newly, YouTube. Ciao.